Hey everyone, welcome back to the RPGames YouTube channel. My name is Ralph, this is Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. We did a lot of talking in the previous episode. We're in Defender's Heart still, the tavern, where pretty much all of the survivors of what happened in Canabras are gathering while I do my yoga again. We have not finished speaking to everyone, so we're going to continue. There is still a couple more characters. I hope you don't mind. That's one of the main reasons why I play RPGs, is to really dive into the story and check all the dialogue options and everything, but that might not be for everyone, so you can always let me know in the comments. But we are gonna continue with, who's this? Indarah. An imposing young Oread is surrounded by a crowd of crusaders who are hanging on her every word. I hope this example clearly illustrates the difference between Jetska legionnaires from the last war and the Crusaders. The perfection of form and spirit they were imbued with during creation turned them into parts of a well-balanced war machine, not a ragtag bunch of individuals, a united whole. And the Jetska Imperium was the first human kingdom to establish itself in the inner sea region after centuries of darkness and devastation caused by Earthfall. Its citizens spoke a nearly forgotten language called Jetska, whose alphabet became the basis of the alphabets of the modern languages of Skald, Frisian and Taldane. At its height, it dominated all of northwestern Garund and also parts of southwestern Avistan. Raids of desert nomads and attacks by powerful outsiders from minus 3,300 onwards, and the lack of a strong eastern trade route, led to the slow decline of Jetska. Assyrian, then a burgeoning kingdom under the control of the powerful pharaoh of forgotten plagues, pushed westward. It overthrew the already weakened Jetska, and the Imperium was plunged into numerous succession wars around minus 2764, from which it was never again able to recover its former political, military and economic power. Because of this military and economic defeat, the important cultural, magical and technological advances of the Jetska Imperium were largely lost and forgotten. Now tell me again why I am supposed to be impressed by your reckless assaults, where everyone is fighting for their ego and for the right to beat their peers into a swift but pointless heroic sacrifice. Some of the crusaders grumble unhappily, but it's clear that they are captivated by the woman's words. The only exception is a scraggly and disheveled halfling monk whose puffy black eye gives him away as a brawler and a troublemaker. He enthusiastically punches forward and tries to engage, but one of his friends swiftly jabs him in the back with an elbow, making the poor fellow pause to catch his breath. Looks like we got ourselves a student of warfare. The woman gives you a suspicious look and raises an eyebrow. Were your words meant to recognize my achievements or to start a fight the way Mandavian crusaders usually do? One of the crusaders angrily curls his fists tightly and retorts with a burst of passion. If those just of yours or whatever had come for us, we'd have their guts for garters. You think we've never fought a mighty adversary before? The soldier's stern face cannot fully conceal his relish. He clearly plans to enjoy this confrontation. Crusaders around him look upon their exotic opponent with a mixture of irritation and piqued interest. The woman chuckles before cutting off her interlocutor. I would love to see you storm a 60-foot-tall walking castle shaped like a gigantic elephant that carries siege fortifications on his back. And I'll have you know these fortifications were defended by Jetskan priests craftsmen, armed with demon-bound war machines. They use the enemies you cannot defeat as mindless weapons. The woman gives the people around her a triumphant look and adjusts her hair with pointed nonchalance. Her voice takes on a lecturer's tone. You should not argue with someone who happens to be the most authoritative researcher on the history of warfare, 3,000 years before the foundation of Absalom. The woman looks at you and flashes an amused smile. Lecture is over. Do my esteemed listeners have any questions? We can't even attack her? Jesus. Who are you? I'm Indarah, a warrior magus, scholar of classical warfare from Garund. I admit I'm mildly offended by the fact that my name is entirely unfamiliar to you, but I'm willing to accept this is due to Avistan's isolation from the sophisticated culture of the world at large. Oh my goodness, they turned Jubilost into an Oread now. You've come a long way to be here. I like to think myself as an inhabitant of Golarion, and I don't narrowly identify with any country in particular. So why did you come here? To witness a legendary war. Confrontation between denizens of a plane famous for its love of violence and the crusaders from every continent, united by the common goal of defending their home. An epic struggle of colossal proportions. Hasn't been particularly epic so far, truth be told. Maybe she just can't see it from here. The view will get way more epic if she stops hiding among us and takes a walk outside. The woman smirks contemptuously. She does not deem the monk's words worthy of comment. Looks like you know more about warfare than any of us. Oh? Am I hearing things, or did someone finally acknowledge my competence in the art of warfare? Perhaps there is a sufficiently open-minded person among the Crusaders after all. Find myself pleasantly surprised. Why don't you join the Crusaders and show them how fighting should be done? And while you're at it, why don't you summon some of those gigantic walking castles? No, I'm a historian, an analyst, a theorist. Do you know what these three words have in common? They describe a mortal woman who does not participate in the conflict upon which her thesis will be founded. Then again, I will hardly be able to describe this mess as anything other than a feeble likeness of the last war of Jizka. The more dangerous the upcoming scuffle is, the more motivated we are to find clever and pretty words to justify not actually doing the fighting. What is this last war that you mentioned? The last war of Jizka, of course. Large-scale conflict that took place 3,000 years before the foundation of Absalom. There was a war against the Syrian pharaoh Forgotten Plagues, the war that ended the legendary Jizka Empire. An epic struggle that became the most vibrant page in military history. Alas, all conflicts that followed it were but a pale shadow, including the one I'm witnessing here. And why is this last war so inspiring? Imagine legions of golems imbued with extraplanar spirits, marching into battle. Imagine flying cities that swoop out of the clouds like terrifying monstrous birds of prey to drop forces on top of enemy castles. Picture gigantic mechanisms powered by captive and very angry demons and devils. Imagine standing in the warpath of walking citadels, having to cover your ears to block out the sound of cannons loaded with shrieking elementals. Finally, imagine the ultimate weapon that defeated the Jizka, the deadly Night Plague. This affliction was an attack dog, a trained epidemic, a tamed pestilence, striking only those who its master wanted to kill. Imagine all these terrors and understand that no flight or fancy can even come close to the horror of nightmares that they made real. So why do you know so much about this war? I can say without false modesty that there is no more authoritative researcher in Golarion when it comes to the history of warfare 3,000 years before the foundation of Absalom. I've dedicated my whole life to this subject. I've personally visited old battlefields and studied the most mysterious and forbidden archives containing chronicles of ancient wars, sometimes risking my life in the process. I saw a fallen sky city of the Shori Empire with my own eyes. I ripped out the control crystal from an exterminator-class combat golem that guarded the Jizka laboratory with my own hands. These fingers held the glass flask that the servants of Pharaoh Forgotten Plague used to create the first generation of pestilence that devastated the Jizka Imperium. How do I know so much? I saw and touched everything I'm telling you about. You're wrong to treat the Crusaders with such disdain. Allow me to explain. Oh, like Cauldar is turning poet now. Or MC, that's also possible. A debate! Oh, I will be happy to prove that the current conflict can't hold a candle with the last war of Jizka. Very well. The last war of Jizka was waged using a significantly greater number of troops. Both sides actively relied on reinforcements from allied planes, and their strategic planning was perfected through no fewer than 7 rounds of intensive design. None of the above applies to this war of yours. Oh boy, here we go with the skill rolls. Compared to the Jetska, we are but stone club-wielding kobolds. I would like to conclude my thesis with a few words of wise counsel from Dagon, an advisor to the Pharaoh of Forgotten Plagues. I doubt you will comprehend the true genius of his statement, but here it is nevertheless. A gadfly sees the ox pays no heed to the gadfly, but crimson fever takes them both. Which one is more easy? I would say the diplomacy one. The events of the past are shrouded in legend, but the fate of the world is being decided here and now. That is what you failed to grasp. Aw, said he, standing in the middle of a dingy tavern. That's a good burn. One mustn't overestimate the importance of current events for world history. Should Canabras fall, it will become yet another page in the chronicles of the Worldwound conflict. Should it endure, it will be fortunate to earn any mention at all. Well, let's try this one. I mean, we might have just try. Wait. The monk with the black eyes stifles a giggle and looks like he wants to say something, but ultimately holds himself back. Yeah, no, let me try to finish the debate first. The principles of war are always the same. Weapons, causes, and resources may change, but the foundations remain immutable. And we fail again. Then why don't we study tactics by watching a couple of rock-wielding goblins fighting over a dead rat? Okay, monk, what do you have to add? Oh, enough. I was patient with you, so-called expert, but I've got something to say. Firstly, screw you for disrespecting us and what we are doing because of some dusty old books. Secondly, I heard tales about the epic wars of old, in Nex, Tianxia, and elsewhere. And each time they claimed it was a slaughter no future war could hold a candle to. So say the old farts, while honest soldiers like us get ready for the next battle. Because we need to go out there and fight. So later we too can say our war was the most legendary of all the young whippersnappers, who won't be nearly as good as we were. Thirdly, you claim to know war, but do you really? You can wag your tongue, but can you actually fight? Or are we listening to an empty chatterbox that's read a few books, but hasn't even been in a brawl? You can enter a barber shop and run into a dozen such experts. Show us what you're worth, so we can be sure there is something to respect. Oh, here goes the bar brawl. Indarah is slightly taken aback and looks at the monk with obvious displeasure. I am not going to compete with you in brutishness. Look for another pugilist if you wish to have the symmetry of your face restored. The warrior woman raises her chin and coldly gazes at the crowd of crusaders cheering and whooping for the monk. Looks like holding a scholarly debate in a godforsaken tavern was a mistake. Have you changed your mind about joining the Crusaders? I don't see the point. You Crusaders appear to be quite confident in your skills. Nothing else, you've presented your arguments to me with extreme confidence. This is a worthy blade. It will be of use, not only for the strong, but also for the wise. Okay, so we received an item at least. And this is where I bid you farewell. Before the end of the day, I was planning to observe how winged demons use pack tactics to drive their prey like herds of livestock. It's about time I got back to my research. Stay safe. Everybody uses magic here, damn. The monk nudges you with an elbow, his friendly jab perhaps harder than intended due to his enthusiasm. Yet another egghead full of theory but no sense. To understand war, you need to live it, take part in it, not gawk at it from the library. The monk takes off a pair of plate gauntlets and hands them to you. If you ever see this chatterbox sling muck at Crusaders again, use these to smack her across the face. Tell her I said hi. Okay. Can we speak to him some more? No. Then we have another companion here, Seelah. Hey there, during the march to the dungeon we never got a chance to exchange a proper greeting. It's high time I shake your hand. I'd like to know more about you, Seelah. Of course, anything Ask anything, I will answer honestly. I would expect nothing else from a paladin of Iomadai. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from? I'm a little bit from Geb, a little bit from Katapesh, mostly from the Knights of Iomadai. I was accepted and began my training at 14. I belong to their ranks more than I belong to any other place. You've come to Mendev by a long road, haven't you? A very long one. The traveler is expected to have amusing stories, unfortunately. I have only 3 tales of any interest, and I'd like to save them for our next feast. Otherwise I won't have anything to show for myself when it's time to start bragging. And that just won't do, especially since I'll win the night with my cautionary tale of a battle with chupacabras. Let's go lawful here. Isn't your attitude towards life and war too carefree, especially for a paladin? Was that a hint of reproach? If you're only asking, then no, I don't think so. You have to know when it's time for jokes and when it's time for mourning, the right moment for joys and for sermons. And sometimes a good traveling story can be all those things. If it entertains and purifies the soul, the story about the chupacabras is one of the good ones. Picture a small town in Kadira. Down in the dungeon, there's 2 murderers waiting to be executed. The gallows are already built for them. The rope's been bought. Sometimes life takes a surprising turn. Suddenly a paladin of Iomadai appears in the doorways and offers the murderers a deal. If they go with her to fight some monsters, they live. If they survive, that is. There's a big difference between imminent death and probable death with a glimmer of hope, wouldn't you say? So here we are, traveling through the desert, me and my friend, the priestess of Sarenrae, along with the little rat folk fellow who'd ask for our help, and the 2 cutthroats. We get to the rat folk village, saw their bodies lying around, all drained dry. We'd figured we'd have to fight vampires. That's how the little rat folk described the monsters who attacked their village. That's why we went in all brazen-like. The sun was high, and vampires couldn't attack until dusk. We never got a chance to look around. Black shadows, quick as the wind, attacked us from all sides. Not vampires, chupacabras. One of the lads we pulled from the gallows got killed right away. The second one ran for his life. That left me, the rat folk, and Kira. That was the name of the priestess, as we all steeled ourselves for the fight of our lives. And Kira is, I think, the cleric iconic character for the Pathfinder RPG. Just when we thought the end had come, with the chupacabras surrounding me like a pack of dogs around a bear and our red folk friend wounded and down, the teeth of the quickest of those blasted monsters was clenched on Kara's shoulder. Right then, when all hope was lost, the other lad from the gallows suddenly comes running back. He kills the beast attacking Kira. I'm sure you know what a turning point in a fight looks like. Well, this was it. A moment before we were lost, and a moment later we had it back under control. Chupacabras dropped dead one by one. The little red folk is united with his family, who were hiding in the basement. Priestess and I closed the eyes of that boy from the gallows who saved us. Was ashamed he didn't survive the fight. May the gods keep his soul in his journey through the afterlife. That is a good story. Could have died in disgrace on the gallows, but instead he died a hero. And I'd fancy the stunt earned him some points at his final judgment. Smart to remember our journey doesn't end in death. Had it not been for that mercy, Milos, that was his name, would be hanging from a noose, and me, Kyra, and all the red folk would be dead in that village. Someone told me that a kind deed done by an unkind person is 100 times more precious. By the same token, an evil done by a noble soul is 100 times more horrifying. That's what I really wanted to say. Chupacabras were just a good starting point. What made you become a paladin of Iomadai? That's a serious question, and a good one. You should ask it of your companions. It's a long story. To start with, 12 years ago I was nothing like the person I am now. I roamed the streets of Solku, the other homeless orphans. I stole, I fought, I was hired sword for a bit. Not the proper origin for a paladin, is it? Actually, my origin story is a pickpocket. Yes, those who criticized my choice for game mechanics. Look at this. Seelah was a thief as well. Back then, Solku was a city of orphans, widows, and widowers. Gnolls decimated the city regularly. My parents were among their victims. People there heard about new deaths before they finished mourning their previous losses. One day a group of knights of Iomadai brought a glimmer of hope to the city. But while others saw them as saviors and protectors, I was busy pricing up their noble horses and their gleaming mithril armor, wondering just how much one of their pretty swords would fetch. A thief lives one day at a time. That's what they say. I was the type that never thought past the next job. Anyhow, I was able to sneak into the knight's camp and steal one of their mithril helms. And I was right there when a gnoll attacked the helm's owner. Akemi was her name, and dealt a blow to her unprotected head. A gnoll like all those others, she'd fearlessly driven from the gates of Solku. That one blow was fatal, but who really was to blame for her death? The gnoll attacker, or the young thief named Seelah? I know what it takes to survive sometimes. I can't judge you. Well, that's true. Well, I can. I believe everyone deserves a chance at redemption. But redemption means you understand what you did and you're willing to be harder on yourself from now on. You're asking what brought me into the ranks of Iomadai's warriors. We all choose the paladin's path for our own reasons. Some are guided by nobility of spirit, some by a desire to fight injustice. I became who I am through penance, and a debt unpaid. The day Akemi died, protecting my city, I wanted to kill myself for the terrible guilt I felt. Then I realized it wouldn't make the world any better, and I decided that instead, I'd try to take her place. I'd become who she has been, protect the innocent that she would no longer be able to protect. If I remember correctly, I think this is a little bit different from the story of the iconic character in the tabletop role-playing game, is it not? Wasn't the helm... I mean, she stole the helm, and then I think the owner of the helm got wounded, and then when they found out, they gifted the helm to Seelah. Was it not something like that? Or was it maybe the other paladins who gifted the helm to her? I'm not quite sure. I thought it was a little bit different from this story. Anyway, what are the principles that paladins of Iomadai follow? Yeah, I'm not gonna ask that question since I'm one myself. When the Skari attacked Canabras, everything seemed to be lost. The first person I met after the catastrophe was you, my sister in fate. I believe this is a sign that Iomadai watches over us. I hope that's true. Although to be honest, our mentors used to warn against being too eager to see messages from the goddess in every little thing. Being devout is all well and good. You've got to rely on your own head. Let's see. Irabeth said your friend Jana Aldori is missing. Do you know where we should look for her? Irabeth is worried about her fighters. I understand that. I wanted to look for Jana myself, so I didn't distract you. But since you're in this too, I could use some help. Jana and I met in Canabras a few days ago. Just hit it off. We went drinking together. We went to that unforgettable celebration together too. We got separated in the crowd. So we should start looking from the main square. That's where I last saw her. Jana's a good fighter, even if she's green. She couldn't have become an Aldori otherwise. I hope that means she's alright. What do you think of what's going on in Canabras? It's complete chaos. It's lucky we're here to handle it, right? Does the way I talk bother you? I know I can seem blasé. Many good people and our protector Terendel have died here in Canabras. The Paladin of Iomadai is expected to be properly respectful and solemn. But I'd prefer to face my troubles with a smile and a bit of common sense. Grief is a weapon they'll use against you. It can undermine a warrior's spirit. It's better we hold off on grief until we've driven the last demon and cultist from the city. There's wisdom in the traditions of mourning, and one shouldn't reject them. All the more so if inappropriate merriment could offend other mourners. Many people's loved ones perished here in Canabras. You may be right. I should keep myself in check more. Better discipline, more self-control. Qualities suited to a paladin. Yes. Be more suited, Seelah. Is fighting demons all you want? Or are you looking for something more? How about covering myself in glory and becoming the hero of 100 ballads? At least a dozen, if they're lively ones. Anyway, to be more serious, the area around the Worldwound is the best place for a paladin who wishes to defend the weak and serve good. Being part of the crusade is reward enough for me. There's something that worries me. I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing my brothers in arms, but the Eagle Watch and the other orders are focused on just one aim, the war against the Worldwound. That's why they can sometimes overlook the smaller things. Ordinary misfortunes, you know. I always liked being a wandering knight, because any moment I could get up and go help a poor red folk whose family had been kidnapped, or an old woman whose favorite dog had gone missing. So here's my answer. I don't have some big important goal, but I'll be happy to help those who need it. A little bit here and there. Alright, thanks for the talk, Seelah. Okay, and now we have one final person to talk to, and that's Irabeth. Irabeth rubs her red and tired eyes. Any success? How is the city? Well, I haven't really left the Defender's Heart yet, Irabeth. Sorry about that. Got caught up in stories, you know. Oh yeah, and there's this tiefling chained up in the basement. What can you tell me about him? Woljif is a petty thief from a gang of tieflings operating in Canabras. That's what we call them in these parts. They tried to rob a vendor of magical items recently. Unfortunately, we apprehended only one of them and the rest managed to escape. We have nowhere else to keep him apart from the Defender's Heart, but that's hardly a prison. Woljif knows it too. He's been begging us for days to let him go free and have someone vouch for him. He's already asked you to put in a good word for him, hasn't he? If you want to recruit Woljif and put him to good use, go ahead. Take him off our guards' hands. We can ill afford to let a soldier spend their days watching over a middling thief. I hope the tiefling proves useful, should you decide to take him along. Okay, well, I mean, Woljif, consider yourself hired, I would say. What's our main objective? You heard what the demon said. Going to desecrate the Wardstone and blow up the whole barrier around the Worldwound. That would be an even worse disaster than the Worldwound's expansion before the Second Crusade. Not only Canabras, but every city with a Wardstone will be destroyed, including the capital. Can't allow that, no matter what. We will retake it, even destroy it if we must. Iomadai's gift must not become a weapon of the Abyss. Tell me about the Eagle Watch. It was a small order created to fight not only demons, but also the enemies within. To maintain the purity of the paladin ranks, prevent heresy and identify spies, and it failed miserably at that. The Templars of the Ivory Labyrinth infiltrated it and formed their nest within its ranks. Pledging their lives to Baphomet, these cultists schemed to subvert the good works of the Crusaders. They caused trouble in Crusader camps, instigating fights and egging participants on to greater violence. They spread lies and sowed seeds of fear with voices sweetened by magic. Some have even assumed the roles of holy crusaders, risen in the ranks of other knightly orders, waiting for the moment when their treachery can be used to achieve a most foul end. After the Queen entrusted me with leading the order, Anivia and I practically built it from scratch. We got rid of dead weight, people who weren't committed. We organized ways to transmit messages and orders safely. We introduced reliable ciphers. We found tacit allies around the city. Crusader orders to street beggars. And now Woljif, I guess. This was my personal crusade to purge the city of the Templars who had infested it. And I thought I was winning. I could feel it. We were so close to driving the cultists out of Canabras, but it's hard to admit, but those successes did not count for much once the demons entered the city. On the contrary, if it wasn't for you, there wouldn't be a headquarters at Defender's Heart. The cultists would have served up the city on a platter to the demons. Yes, that is true. It's a good thing we achieved something. Thank you. Let me ask you some personal questions, because you know me, I'm one curious paladin. I must warn you, there are some things I don't have the right to discuss. Well, tell me about Anivia anyway. We met in Timon, as I was wandering aimlessly from one ordeal to another. We returned to Canabras together to expose the Templars of the Ivory Labyrinth. The day the Queen knighted me was the second happiest day of my life. The first was the day of our wedding. But Anivia isn't just my beloved. She's my staunchest ally. We share every victory and defeat. The best of me is alive thanks to her. Thank you for saving her back then, the day Canabras fell. Wasn't that yesterday? Back then, like 3 years ago. Before her return, the only thing giving me strength to protect the Defender's heart was the hope I'd see her again. We are in your debt. How did you become a paladin? A bitter smile appears on the half-orc's face. I don't much like to remember it, believe it or not. The story of how I became a paladin is also the story of how I failed to become a knight. My parents were crusaders, may their souls stand together in Iomadai's celestial army. When I was born, they retired from the war, started preparing me to continue their legacy. But my father was an orc. You'd be pressed to find a calmer, wiser, and more pious servant of the goddess than he. But still, all his life he was dogged by sideways looks and whispers. When I grew older, it was time for me to serve. I decided anywhere but Canabras. This was where my father had served loyally, and his only reward had been injustice. Besides, the witch hunters, led by the honorable prelate Hulrun, stalked the city with a heavy hand. Who knows what they have done to a strange girl with green skin? Instead, I went to, well, you can laugh. I was young and foolish. I chose Lastwall, of all places. You can imagine how well I was accepted in a country that has been battling the orcs of Belkson since its foundation. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That was, pretty naive choice, I would say. There were many there like me, but we were all treated as second-class citizens. To the locals, my green skin was worse than leper scabs. Even my brothers in fate kept their distance. I took my vows, and the goddess granted me the powers of a paladin. But even then, not a single order would accept me into their ranks. I spent another 6 months knocking on doors before I realized a simple truth. I serve Iomadai, not these people. I don't have to prostrate myself before them. So I left, as a paladin, not a knight. You must stick out like a sore thumb, no matter where you go, right? I know many people envy Aasimars. Most of the ones I've known found their celestial heritage a burden. I find it hard to imagine what unasked for adoration must be like, but I'm sure it doesn't make life any easier or any more pleasant. This is actually cool. I've noticed this in a number of conversations. Like they actually refer to your character. So here is a comment about Aasimars. I'm quite sure if I was a dwarf, there would be a different line here. Similarly, when I was talking to Seelah, she made a comment about being another servant of Iomadai. So the game clearly... Well, obviously the game knows which choices I made, but I mean, the developers chose different dialogue options based on what you do in character creation, and I really, really like that. That's very cool. Where are you from? I was born in Canabras. I grew up on a farm just outside it. But my way back home lay at the end of a long and winding road. It took me years of traveling through foreign lands before I came to be where I've always belonged. How did the people of Canabras feel about your background? Well, they tolerated it surprisingly well. Shouldn't have been so wary. Crusaders don't tend to be prejudiced as the rule. After all, heroes from all over the world, even from other continents, come here to fight the demons. Apparently, the people were only suspicious of full-blooded orcs. There were already many like me here, and we don't have any problems, though the locals do have their superstitions. Mendev is as merciless as Lastwall. They just have a different set of victims. I kept seeing those same sideways looks and scowls, hearing the familiar whispers. But where once they were used to whisper behind my back and point at me, now they whisper in my ear and point at someone else. So strange to be on the other side of humiliation, to wipe the spit from your face and suddenly be invited to change position and spit at someone else. You must have figured out by now, I'm talking about tieflings. It's true, there are many of them among the cultists, a few among the crusaders, and our fighters do all they can to drive away those who would be our allies. People shun them, call them Aurelius spawn, or worse. As if they chose to be born like that. I believe it's quite a feat to rise against the call of one's blood, join the forces of good. Still, most only see them as the enemy. I once saw a knight bleeding to death because he wouldn't let a tiefling priest touch his wound. Alas, I haven't been able to change this in all my time in Canabras. So how did you join this knightly order then? I left last wall when traveling. The goddess guided me and my path led me to where atrocities were happening. I often fought in exchange for gold, but never for unworthy aims, of course. I wandered river kingdoms for a while, killing monsters, tracking down criminals. Sometimes I thought I was just wasting time, that my true place was in Canabras. But I pushed those thoughts away. Didn't even want to think about going back. In the end, divine providence has brought me to my senses. It happened in Timon. I was tracking a gang of bandits, which my employer suspected was a cover for Rasmussen spies. I managed to find their lair, but inside I found something far more dangerous than spies, an unholy temple to Zon Kutan. When I broke in there, the cultists were about to sacrifice someone, the person who was destined to become my wife, Anivia. That's another story. So the realm known as Rasmussen was once just another turbulent, violent river kingdom, an archduchy of Melkad, where leadership changed as often as the years. This ended in 4661 when the land was conquered by Rasmir, a tyrant claiming to have ascended from godhood. And Zon Kutan is also known as the Midnight Lord, the Dark Prince and the Prince of Pain. God of darkness, envy, loss, and pain, possesses one of the most twisted and evil minds in the great beyond. His position as a god of pain is well earned, and he has been the root of countless tortures, murders, and worse throughout time. He was once a benevolent demigod named Dao Brawl, but was corrupted when he traveled to the far dark places between the plains and returned in his current form. His half-sister Shaelin still holds out hope. She can redeem him, though the Lord of Shadows shows no sign of remorse or compassion. After I cut down the cultists, I examined their papers and couldn't believe my eyes. A network of evil cults had spread through all of Aviston, including Mendev. Worse, the document clearly showed that their allies, the Templars of the Ivory Labyrinth, had infested my native Canabras, were even among the ranks of the Paladins. After that, delaying my homecoming would be tantamount to desertion. Luckily, I was no longer alone. Anivia was as eager to destroy the cultists as I was. Anivia and I hurried to Canabras. We couldn't trust anyone. The papers indicated that the cultists had infiltrated everything. Luckily, I had some experience in investigation, and my beloved, she knew her way around working logs, tailing people, trading information with the city's bottom feeders. Soon we defeated not the whole Hydra, but a few of its heads. Do you know who turned out to be the leader of the cultists? Commander of the Eagle Watch. Can you imagine? While Prelate Hulran was chasing witches throughout the city, the enemy had infiltrated the very order responsible for internal security. The scandal reached the ears of the Queen. At first, she planned to disband the order in disgrace, but then she offered its command to me, put its salvation in my hands. Of course, there was a small catch. I wasn't a knight, but I was made commander just the same, skipping the usual progression through the ranks. Interesting. Wardstone, I think we talked about Wardstone plenty though. They are our greatest treasure, the shield given to us by Iomadai herself, placed in Canabras and other Mendavian cities and fortresses by her herald. The chain of Wardstones forms a protective barrier that stops the expansion of the Worldwound and keeps the demons from moving beyond its borders. Shudder to think what will happen if that barrier falls. Well, we might find out about that in the next episode. Like I said in the previous one, I want to keep these ones a bit shorter than usual. So in the next episode, let's take a quick look at the journal, because I'm sure we're having a good amount of tasks already. Like, oh yeah, we need to get Woljif. Actually, let's get Woljif. Let's go back to the basement if I can still locate it. What's up, Woljif? Get out of there.
Well, Chief, what do you got for me?
I talked to Irabeth and I've decided to make you part of my troop. We'll see how that goes.
Ha! You must be a smooth talker. Come on, Delvin, get these bracelets of yours off me. I'm going free.
You're sure to regret this. This tiefling will fleece you for everything you've got. Mark my words.
You're a bitter little man, Delvin. Petty and mean. You can't even be happy for me, can you? I pity you. I'll leave you alone with your sad little soul. So long. And now, Chief, straight down to business. You see, I'm one of those guys that people around here call thieflings. We just call ourselves the family. After we knocked over that shop and I got stuck here in the Defender's Heart, a little bird told me that Big Sister Charisme wanted to see me. That she had some questions to ask me. You following? Now, she won't be asking me questions like, Woljif, how'd you manage to get out of this one? Or, Woljif, you're so thin, didn't they feed you? No, something serious has gone down, and I just know they want to try to pin something on me. I can feel it in my tail. So, I knew right away that I couldn't go alone. You turned up just in time, Chief. You don't need to do anything when we get there. Just stand behind me and look mean, and I'll handle the rest. Somehow. Let's go, I'll show you the way.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not gonna end in combat. It's not. I'm just gonna stand there, yes. We might as well speak to him as well then. I mean, I want to know more about you, buddy. How much is more? Well, are your family tieflings too? My family, it's an interesting story actually, but I don't tell it to just anyone. Well, I'm the guy who got you out of prison, so I mean, you know, you can make some kind of exceptions for me. It's actually pretty funny that we will be in the same party, me with celestial blood and you with demon blood. My father and mother had a bakery. Their life was great, but the gods never blessed them with any children. One day, my mother went to the river to wash some clothes and saw a basket floating downstream. Inside the basket was a baby, adorable and chubby and fast asleep. It was yours truly. In my hand was a note spritzed with expensive perfume that said, "Take care of my little angel." My mother brought me home and she and my father realized right away that I was heaven sent. Yes. They raised me as their own. When I turned 15, my mother showed me my baby blanket. It was embroidered with the coat of arms of an unknown kingdom, all in gold thread. Ever since then I've been looking for my real parents, but it's not easy, traveling takes money. So if you have a few gold coins, I'll pay you back as soon as I find my real family. Give you my word. Yeah, yeah, right. Seriously? Usually everyone just believes everything I say. People love stories like that, you know? Like a cute baby, basket, blanket. What's not to love? They look at me differently, as if I'm worth more just because the sheets I spit up on might have had a fancy coat of arms on them. If I was really a prince, I wouldn't be sitting around here, tell you that much. I've already gone to take what was rightfully mine. And then I'd come back with an army, so I could watch the guards and merchants who pushed me around all my life bow and scrape before me. That's not gonna happen. You wanna hear a real story? True story is boring. My family is human. Both my father and mother. They used to live in a village nearby. Forgot the name. When my ma had me, my old man got so mad he almost killed her. Pinned her to the wall and started asking questions, like why his son had horns and a tail. Well, my ma told him that her mother, my grandma, used to fool around with a demon. When he heard this, Daddy Dearest got drunk, trashed the house, then took off. I don't remember any of this, of course. My grandma told me. I was about 3 years old when my mother brought me to Canabras and left me with my grandma. She said to her, "You and your demon have ruined my life. Now you handle him." And then she left. I haven't seen her or my dad since. She did leave a blanket though, that part was true. But my grandma burned it because it was infested with lice. It wasn't even good enough to use as a rag. You think after all that my grandmother saw the light, felt rightly ashamed and kissed my horns? I wish. People used to give her trouble for fooling around with the demon. She wasn't welcome anywhere, so she got angry. Normal kids get bedtime stories, see? But the only tales I got, told were how my dad was worthless, my mom was a slut, and I was a demon spawn that no one cared about. She only kept me so I could help around the house and steal things she needed, so that's the truth. Didn't you just tell me the real story? Like, yeah, I was gonna say that you just told me. How did you become a tiefling? Weren't you born that way? There's a bit of a strange questions. I already was a tiefling and life made me a thief. I've been in this business since I was a kid. My grandma used to say, if you don't work, you don't eat. She gave me as an apprentice to Iger, a tiefling neighbor of ours. He was a cunning old geezer. Knew how to take a purse off somebody's belt, how to cut open bags and detect it, even do some magic. He used to climb through basement windows and open doors from the inside while I was still small enough. And when I grew and stopped fitting through the windows, I decided I was done with my education. Repaid my grandma for everything she'd done for me, which was absolutely nothing. Why would I feed her if she wasn't bringing me any money? If you don't work, you don't eat, so I took off. I got bored of my teacher too, but when I as much as hinted at leaving, he said I owned him for the education. So I just nodded and then joined the Owlbears, the gang that ran our district. Told them that Iger was working their territory. I don't know what happened to him, but I stayed with the Owlbears. Then their leader started giving me the cold shoulder. I did steal from him, but never that much. So I had to rat them out to the guards. Then enjoyed the golden hands. It was a good time, rich pickings. Would have stayed with the golden hands, but Nortman promised me a bigger cut if I told them where the golden hands kept their loot. I'm no fool, of course, so I told them. Jesus. After that, I only had one option. Join the Nortmen. Then the family came. First, no one took them seriously, calling them tieflings and all that, but I felt right away they had power behind them, and they had more money. I'm always on the winner's side, Chief. That's why I joined the tieflings. And right on time. Some thugs came from the capital and made the Northmen leave. The one who survived are in the family now, too. So tell me about the tieflings. Well, I won't tell you everything, but I can tell you a little. Tieflings are Mendavian thieves. The gang was started in Mendev's capital by someone or other, and soon after they'd spread all over Galarian. They're also called a family. You know why? Because us tieflings are easy to spot. Wherever we go, guards always hassle us, asking, are you lost or somewhat hornhead? We usually say we're visiting family, and if they say, oh yeah, who? You give them the name of a local tiefling, who confirms everything, even if he's never seen you before in his life. That's why we're all brothers and sisters. There are rules. Who does what, who gets what cut. I won't say it's a lot, but they make it worth your while. They'll even heal you if you take an arrow. The biggest no-no is this, you don't steal from the family. If you don't contribute to the shared pot, you'll get the cold shoulder. You won't be treated like family no more. Then everyone will hear that you went to visit some relative who have a farm someplace. My best guess? The farm is some underground well beneath Canabras, where they breed grave worms. Sister Karesme, our boss, looked the other way more often. I'd really be able to spread my wings. Stealing from someone you call a sister, that's pretty low, buddy. Birds fly low before a storm. I'm just surviving the best as I can. Imagine the situation, Chief. You're 7 years old, you come home. Your own grandma, your family, is lying there drunk. There's no food because she got wasted in the morning and didn't cook anything. And you know that she has a stash under the 3rd floorboard. You take this money, so you don't starve to death. Then when she wakes up, she beats you because you shouldn't have taken it. You should have stolen some food. You're a waste of space. That's something you can never understand, Chief. You only care about moral choices. You always know what's right and wrong. Brother, sister, grandma, mother, in real life. They're just words. So, what do you think of Canabras? It used to be such a hole, then crusaders and refugees came here and things started looking up. Although it depends on who you ask, I suppose. Witches better steer clear of here, because Iomadai's followers are ferocious. Especially Holren Shapok, the local inquisitor. He's a tough old goat. I didn't see it myself, but servant girl at the tavern told me that her second cousin's son from his third wife is a paladin. And that uncle of the neighbor's daughter said we said that maybe someone said that Hulrun takes an unsheathed sword with him, even to the privy, and when he sleeps, he puts it on the pillow next to him. And when he's in his cups, he strokes the blade and whispers sweetly to it, "You are my one true friend. You're the only one I can rely on." Actually, I might be guilty of whispering to my blade once in a while. I mean, it is pretty. Irabeth's given us a hard time too. You as much as look at some nice little bobolin before you can think of taking it, before your fingers even twitch. She's coming for you, with her nostrils flaring and her fangs glinting. A scary woman. But even she's better than Sister Charisme, our boss here in Canabras. By our, I mean the Tiefling's boss. If you get caught by Irabeth, it's all out in the open. You go to prison, or you end up as worm food. But if you step on Charisme's toes, poof, you're gone, just like that. No one ever sees you again. All you hear is he went to the family's farm, even though he's never had a family, or a farm. You have demon blood in you. Do you feel drawn to the abyss? Why, are you an inquisitor or something? What's it to you? If I've wronged you somehow, just come out and say it. Don't ask me trick questions. I know how it happens. I used to know a fella. He was married to the sister of a guard. Some shady types got him drunk one night and started asking him suspicious questions about the gods, about the queen. So he wakes up hungover, with a headache. Someone's mumbling something, it smells like smoke and his feet are kinda hot. He looks down and there's a fire under him and the prelate is reading out a sentence. Your shadow looks strange. What kind of magic is that? Ladies and gentlemen, roll up, no dark magic, no fraud, a trick without any deception. Woljif snaps his finger and blue flame engulfs him. The shadow that was previously lying calmly at his feet grows, floating in the air behind him. It is the shadow of a huge horned winged demon with claws. Ta-da! Doesn't do anything, just looks scary. I remember when I was little an old beggar showed me and my friends how to make a shadow puppet. Put your fingers together in front of a light and it makes a shadow of a deer or a dog or a dove on the wall. I tried so hard, I wanted to make the best shadow, and it did. It just happened. Funnily enough, that's the last time I had any real friends. He tried to stone me later, screaming at me, calling me a demon. Tiefling is always a demon to these whims. Even the lowest ranking drunken gnome thinks he's better than me, just because he hasn't gotten horns or a tail. The poorest beggar in the filthiest gutter thinks he's better than me. Most people would never show their shadow again after that first time, but I don't care. If stone starts flying again, I'll just run. I'm used to it by now. It's a harmless illusion. You shouldn't show it to anyone. People hate what they don't understand. You're one of those. People who are always scared of what might happen. You're not wrong, though. You better not talk to me in public at all, or you'll get tarred with the same brush. He used to have a so-called friend, a human. Well, he hummed and hawed, then told me to steer clear of him. The neighbors didn't like me. Then I sent the old bear gang to his house, you know, just one last visit to pick something up. I'd taken a shine to his nice pair of calfskin pants. Good lad like him wouldn't have need of them anyway. He found me later and gave me a hiding for my troubles, but that's another story. Okay, let's say I have to go, let's talk later. And with that, finally, another conversation. With that, I'm gonna end the episode. Thanks a lot for watching. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you want to see me finally do some quests, tell me in the comments, hey you douchebag, get to questing, alright? Let me know, don't hold back. See you in the next episode, folks. Thanks for watching.